Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you locally by Caesars Entertainment Group of Atlantic City. Come experience the ultimate sports destination all season long at Wild Wild West Tropicana. Harrah's Resort, Atlantic City. Book your game day experience today. Go to Caesars.com. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast, which is out right now. You can check that out in the podcast, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. And he is here for another edition of Football at 4. Eagles, Raiders. We turn our attention that way. Nick Sirianni speaking today. Had some very interesting things to say. 6 weeks in, we'll look at this team, what the scouts think so far. Geoff Mosher, how you be?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I've been doing well. Now, you would have liked the first 2 hours of the show if you heard it at all. We've been using a lot of Tribe music today.
Oh, nice.
Yes,
nice. Are you guys trying to find your inner peace while this Ben Simmons stuff goes on? Is that the intention?
We're trying to find the Zen for Ben.
Well, good luck with that
Zen
one.
for Ben. There we go. But let's look at this Eagles game against the Las Vegas Raiders and some interesting things by Nick Sirianni today. Let's start with a couple of roster things going on. Lane Johnson is back with the team. Give us a little insight on his participation, and is it a slam dunk that he plays on Sunday?
I would think he's going to play Sunday, but obviously they are kind of ramping him back up after the time that he's missed. Nick Sirianni said he would be limited today, which I imagine when the injury report comes out, it'll reflect that.
Just came out as we're having this conversation right now. He is on the injury report as limited.
There you go. And
not injury-related, resting player.
Yeah, and this is kind of what they've done, not just with injured players or veterans, but since, Nick Sirianni has taken over here, we've seen shorter practices, we've seen more maintenance days, we've seen ramp-up time for guys coming back from injuries. Who was it in training camp who had a couple of ramp-up days, I think, when before he practiced? I can't remember who it was. I think Ryan Kerrigan after the thumb or something like that. But so it doesn't surprise me. But I think that as the week goes on, we'll see if he gets more practice time and becomes a full participant. But without an actual injury, it's hard to think that he won't be out there on Sunday against the Raiders.
Right. So, he was limited today in practice, but it sounds like he could go on Sunday. There was a lot of questions regarding him and how they handled the situation with Nick Sirianni today, really kind of getting into the way they handled the whole Lane Johnson thing. And obviously getting him back means the line will have a new look again. Jordan Mailata most likely will go to left tackle, right? That would be, and everything else would stay the same, you'd think?
Yes, I think Landon Dickerson would stay at left guard, and Jack Driscoll would stay at right guard, yeah.
All right, so the offensive line could have a little bit of a tweak here. Let's look at tight end, where Dallas Goedert's still not back off the COVID list. Richard Rodgers, who was here, then he went to Arizona for about a handful of weeks. I guess when they got Ertz, Rodgers was no longer needed, so now Rodgers is back here with Ertz gone. But Rodgers could have a bigger role on Sunday than expected if Goddard is not ready to go. So how do we look at the tight end spot today on Wednesday?
Yeah, the 6 degrees of Zach Ertz impact here has now landed Richard Rodgers back in Philadelphia, and he could be the number one tight end in the game. I mean, Dallas Goedert, as you and I sit here and have this conversation, is still on the COVID-19 list, and we saw this with Sua Opeta, where he just came off the list, I think, yesterday. So he was on for not yesterday, recently. So he was on the list quite a while. I think for over a week and a half. And so we'll have to see here with Dallas Goedert, because if he cannot produce the two negative tests in 24 hours apart, then he will not be able to rejoin practice or be eligible to play. And without Zach Ertz, the only tight end right now who's on the 53 is Jack Stoll. Richard Rodgers on the practice squad. Noah Togiai is on the practice squad. So obviously those guys would probably be elevated. At least one, maybe two, would be elevated from the practice squad on Sunday to play in the game against the Raiders. The good thing is with Richard Rodgers is that you can just kind of plug and play him. He knows the team. He's been with the team for parts of 3 straight seasons now. So it's not like you have to indoctrinate the guy into your offense too much.
Right. Obviously, if Goddard plays, he would go, and then we would anticipate off Shane Steichen yesterday saying that he's going to have an uptick, right? I mean, did you get the feeling from Shane Steichen that they want to use their tight end more? Now, this is interesting because this obviously builds off something Jalen Hurts said today, something Nick Sirianni kind of explained. Steichen sounded like, hey, we got an explosive guy. It sounded like he wants to get the tight end more involved. Did you get that?
I mean, I got that from the words. The actions, we'll see. I mean, I've heard them say that they need to get Miles Sanders more involved for 5 straight weeks now, and he has not been more involved. So, again, some of that is on the play calling, some of that is on the quarterback, and if there's a comfort level between the quarterback and throwing where where Dallas Goedert is going to be.
Right. All right. So then there was something that Jalen Hurts said today that I guess he doesn't throw towards the middle of the field, and he said, I'm just trying to execute everything is called. So is he saying that they're telling him not to throw the ball over the middle?
I don't think that that's what he's inferring. I think what he's basically saying is, I'm just trying to do what, go with the ball where I think the best plays are, where the play calls tend to be. We've talked about this ad nauseum, the kind of the one read type of offenses, and a lot of these plays that we're seeing that are either one read or no read, because the screen is a no read play. You're just throwing it to a certain spot and, hoping the player makes the play there and the blocking is a sign. But I don't I don't think that they're telling Jalen Hurts not to throw in certain areas. I think there is a function of the offense that results in the data that you're seeing of where he's throwing, but that it's partly play calling and partly where he himself feels comfortable as a quarterback throwing.
Now, Hurts said about, that he's been getting out of the pocket. He said, you're not seeing what I see, but I got to stay in the pocket, make the throw. It's my job to make it right. Now, today on the latest Inside the Birds podcast, you guys talked a little bit with scouts about what they're seeing from Hurts as to why he's fleeing out of the pocket very early, it seems like. I think Andre Dillard on Thursday night had something to do with that.
Yeah, Andre Dillard, but also in fairness to Andre Dillard, I mean, I think we all saw that it looked like the Bucs had a pretty good idea of what the Eagles wanted to do prior to the snap and adjusted their defense accordingly. So it's kind of hard to block guys who already know where the play is going to be. I mean, there were several times that Shaq Barrett seemed right up on Jalen Hurts before the play was even unfolding. So there's some of Andre Dillard, there's some of the play calling that's been predictable, and we don't see what Jalen sees, but the scouts who do this for a living see the things that in Jalen Hurts that they know need to be improved. Part of that is when you do leave the pocket, you got to keep your eyes down the field. We do make a big deal about staying in the pocket versus fleeing. I'm fine if you get out of the pocket, even if it's a little early, as long as you're still scanning the field and trying your hardest to hit a receiver in stride. You got scramble drill going on, but too often he's getting out of the pocket and either going to the sidelines, throwing the ball out of the sidelines, trying to quickly throw before he gets out of the sidelines and it's incomplete. You're not getting a whole lot of explosive out of the pocket plays from Jalen Hurts now as you were, in his first few starts.
So scouts' view right now of Jalen Hurts, do they look at him as a definitive starter, a low-level starter, more of a backup? Are people starting to compile enough, tape, film on enough to formulate an opinion on what they think his role in the NFL is?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not really the line of questioning we have right now. It's more like, what are you seeing? But, obviously what scouts really like to make a decision that you're talking about, Mike, is even more tape. They want more. And a lot of people will tell you it's still a little early in the evaluation process, that these are things that are correctable. But that doesn't mean they're going to be corrected. A lot of times people throw that phrase around. Well, this is correctable. This is correctable. Okay. It doesn't mean it's going to be corrected. That's up to the person to be able to inherently be able to make the adjustments to it. So sometimes you see guys do, sometimes you see guys don't. The stuff that they see that they feel is correctable, and it's now on Jalen Hurts and the coaching staff to work on, is the lower body mechanics. I mentioned keeping the eyes upfield when you're abandoning the pocket. I mentioned lower body, like your base, how your hips return when you're making the throw. Are you winding? Do you have a quick compact delivery, or on the deep balls, which you've seen him do, is kind of have more of drop the hands and wind it up, which costs an extra second and a half for coverage to catch up. Those are things that constantly are always worked on every single day, but unless you're perfect, or unless you're like Brady or Rodgers, right? But these are things that quarterback coaches and offensive coaches work with the quarterback every single day on. And, sometimes you see the progress, sometimes you don't.
Yeah. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast here on Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN, looking at the Eagles moving forward to the Raiders. You guys talked a little bit about John Gannon and the fact that he was highly regarded when he was hired. People thought this is a young, innovative guy. Has there been some disappointment in him as a coordinator?
Of course. I think there has been. You were hoping for a little bit more guesswork from this defense because that's how he came here as advertised. He's going to follow in that, Mike Zimmer and somewhat Matt Eberflus blueprint of trying to make the quarterback think and hold on to the ball a little bit longer with what post-snap disguise. And I don't think you've seen as much as we saw in training camp and as much as we had hoped to see. But it's not because I think he wakes up every day and says, nah. I think you have to have the personnel to be able to do what you want to do. And I think sometimes he does have the personnel in some cases, but you also have to be you have to have the opponent behind the sticks and passing on 3rd and long to be able to kind of really change things up and attack a quarterback's what they're seeing. And too often the Eagles are allowing too many running yards, and that offenses are facing 2nd and 3, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. So they're doing a bad job on 1st and 2nd down, which is not a disguise down. That's a down where you just got to stop the running game mostly, and they have not done a good job of doing that. That, I believe, is personnel related.
Yeah, he's got Darius Slay and Steve Nelson. There's the 2 veterans. He's got Anthony Harris and Rodney McLeod. That's 4 veterans in his secondary, Jeff. Did you think they should put more on their plate? Trust his secondary more? I'm not saying they're great, but you got veteran guys. It's not like you got kids back there.
Yeah, again, I think first of all, I do think since Rodney McLeod's come back, he has done a little bit more different things schematically as far as against the run, bringing a safety in late to the box, playing a little bit some robber defense, which is like almost a single safety, and then that other safety kind of comes across the middle to the guy that you're trying to double and tries to jump the route. He's done a little bit of that more, but the bottom line is when it comes to 1st and 2nd down, that's your D-line and linebackers, and they got to make sure that they stop the run and put the offense in that 2nd and long or 2nd and medium, 3rd and long, 3rd and medium to be able to let your secondary then make plays on the ball. They're playing zone coverage and mostly zone coverage. And within mostly zone coverage, as Darius Slay said today, or just Slay, you should be able to get more turnovers because you're seeing everything in front of you. You're not running around in man coverage with your back to the ball. But there just hasn't been enough opportunities for them because the other teams have been in really good down and distance situations for the offense.
Jeff, obviously, the defense has been kind of up and down. They've played well against lesser teams. They played terrible against better teams. So the defensive personnel, is this a good group? I mean, you look at their personnel and say, hey, they could win games with this defense if their offense can get more consistent.
I still think that the defensive personnel will have to be overhauled greatly in the offseason.
Oh, yeah.
First of all, even if they were pretty good, you got a lot of guys who are either on 1-year deals or at the end of their deals, like guys like Steven Nelson, guys like Anthony Harris, guys like Rodney McLeod. So, some of those guys are veterans, and I can't imagine they're all going to be back. We'll see what happens with the defensive line. So, but they absolutely need better linebacker play, more downhill linebacker play. They absolutely, in my opinion, need a defensive lineman who's more of a run gobbler, run stuffer type of guy. And those guys tend to be like the 310, 315, 320 pound guys if you're going to play that much cover 2 on 1st and 2nd down. And it would help, I don't know, every once in a while to draft a good corner or a safety. I mean, that would always be nice too. The Eagles have struggled there. So I think that they're okay right now. They just lack a lot of playmakers, and they lack the type of personnel you want to be stingier on 1st and 2nd down.
Yeah, I know. I mean, again, like you're right. Their defense it's just the defense is filled with a lot of good, not great players. I mean, Fletcher Cox this year, he's been good, not great. I guess the one guy who's been great is Hargrave, but he's not.
Yep.
Aaron Donald great. He's been getting to the quarterback, but like you said, he's not a huge run-stuffing defensive tackle. They just don't have that great player that another team has to really game plan for. There's just a lot of good players out there. That said,
I called them the steady Eddies. I've used that term about 100 times, in the offseason. I said, this is a defense with a couple of blue chip players and then mostly steady Eddies and not a lot of playmakers, which means they're going to look good against some bad offenses, and they're going to get exposed against really good offenses.
Now, this is an interesting week, though, Moshe, because the Vegas offensive line is not very good. And these are the games that typically John Gannon's defense steps up. Carolina, poor offensive line, they win that game. Atlanta, really poor offensive line, they gobbled them up. This is the kind of game where John Gannon's defense can excel because Vegas's offensive line is not very good.
I agree with you on that. Now, see, Matt Ryan's a pretty good quarterback who doesn't generally turn the ball over. That opening game was a disaster for him in the offense because the offensive line was very bad. Sam Darnold is the type of guy who gets very shaky as soon as the pressure comes down on him. So now that we're 7 weeks into the season and teams start to form their identity a little bit, the Vegas matchup is interesting because I see Derek Carr as not as talented as Matt Ryan, but he's not as shaky with the football as Sam Darnold. So I don't know that you're going to rattle him with pressure because he does a very good job of getting rid of the football pretty quickly. And I think he's got more weapons to work with than maybe Matt Ryan had. Matt Ryan had Calvin Ridley, who's a good player, but that was Kyle Pitts' first game. And then other than that, it was Mike Davis and Cordell Patterson and Russell Gage. Here you've got Darren Waller you really have to worry about. And you're obviously going to have to worry about Henry Ruggs and his ability to go deep. And Josh Jacobs is probably going to get the ball 20 times a game because people are running against the Eagles.
You mentioned Waller. He's a big problem for this team. You
No
asked Gannon about Davion Taylor yesterday. Do you expect more Taylor than we've been getting?
Well, I that's the first thing I noticed in the Tampa Bay tape was that Davion Taylor played quite a bit. And that Tom Brady seemed to enjoy throwing the ball to the side of the field Davion Taylor was on. And sometimes when you're watching it during the game, you don't notice it because a lot of times it's zone coverage and you just see the pass complete to a wide receiver or a tight end and don't really see the schematics of the defense. But when you watched it back, it was clear to me that Tom Brady was taking advantage of the fact that Davion Taylor is inexperienced and it doesn't know exactly where to be all the time. And they capitalized on that. So I asked Jonathan Gannon, do you have to have a certain level of patience when you're playing a guy who lacks that kind of experience? And if you'll notice, the first thing he said was, I expect everybody to play winning football. And then when I followed up, I said, but how would you have the same expectations for Davion Taylor as you would a guy who's played like Singleton 3 or 4 years in the league or somebody else, Eric Wilson? And then he kind of admitted, yes, you can't have those same expectations. So they are obviously playing him for the athleticism and the upside, but of the understanding that there's going to be times where he gets exposed.
Yeah. It'll be interesting, because Eric Wilson was a free agent signee. If they're kind of phasing him out of the defense, are you getting that read?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that even started before the Tampa game. I think against Carolina, you saw more TJ Edwards on the field. I mean, it all depends on what the offense comes out in. If there's 2 tight ends or just 1 tight end or a fullback. Every once in a while, Carolina threw a fullback out there, 2 tight ends. So you did see TJ Edwards a lot. But in this game, I saw a whole lot of Davion Taylor, and I didn't see the snap counts. I can probably look them up real quick, but I did not see as much Eric Wilson as normal.
Obviously, Vegas, I don't know. I guess we're surprised by the fact that they came out with the Gruden stuff, and they went on the road and put up, 34, 35 points against Denver, who's got a good defense. I mean, they're not,
right.
Their problem is the quarterback, instability at the quarterback position. Vegas went and scored 35 points against them this week. So is this, in your mind, a winnable road game?
Yes, I think it is a winnable road game. I am impressed with what the Raiders have done. I think they're the only team in the league so far to have beat the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. So, they started off 3-0, and then they took a little dive there. I know they lost to the Bears, and everybody thought that was such a terrible loss. And it turns out the Bears are 3-3 and have a pretty darn good defense. But as you mentioned, they came back and had a good win over the weekend, and they're home. The one thing that and Adam Kaplan brought this up, and I think it's a really good point. You see kind of these emotional wins like the Raiders had given everything they had been through the week, and it's hard to kind of keep that up week after week. Now, it's beneficial for them that they did it on the road and they come home here, but you wonder if there's an emotional toll from that. That tends to be a little bit more college-y, like Iowa beating Penn State and all that, and then, crapping the bed at home against Purdue a few days ago like they did. But it is something that you see in the NFL too.
All right, Geoff Mosher, the Inside the Birds podcast. New one dropped this morning. Check that out. And, of course, to get you ready for the Eagles and the Raiders, the guys, now it's a 4 o'clock game. You still doing the 10 a.m. pregame?
10 to noon. Still going to do it. We want people to be able to enjoy their 1 o'clock football, but also get great Eagles pregame coverage.
Yeah,
so do it from 10 to noon no matter what.
The Eagles don't play a whole heck of a lot of these 4 o'clock games, but you got a little stretch here. You got Vegas, Chargers, right. Denver. You got 3 out of 4 o'clocks. I don't know if I like the 4 o'clock game.
Yeah, I like the 1 o'clock ones as well. But, this is a part of the schedule that they're going to have to acclimate to.
Yeah, the Vegas, Charger, Denver, the AFC West crew is on the schedule next. Geoff Mosher and the Inside the Birds podcast crew, of course, tomorrow. Andrew DeCecco is here. Adam Kaplan on Friday. Moshe is back on Monday to recap the Eagles and the Raiders right here during Football at 4 on 97.3 ESPN, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. All right, Moshe. I'll see you, pal.
All right, Mike. Have a great one, man.
All right, you do the same. There's Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast.